Man is free at the moment he wishes to be. I have a simple philosophy: fill what's empty. Empty what's full. Scratch where it itches. Alice Roosevelt Longworth. Life is a shipwreck, but we must not forget to sing in the lifeboats. God gave us the gift of life. It is up to us to give ourselves the gift of living well. Appreciation is a wonderful thing. It makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well. Is there anyone so wise as to learn by the experience of others? Judge a man by his questions rather than his answers. Every man is guilty of all the good he did not do. It is said that the present is pregnant with the future. It is difficult to free fools from the chains they revere. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. I do not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. Paradise was made for tender hearts, hell, for loveless hearts. Optimism is the madness of insisting that all is well when we are miserable. What is tolerance? It is the consequence of humanity. We are all formed of frailty and error. Let us pardon reciprocally each other's folly. That is the first law of nature. Superstition is to religion what astrology is to astronomy, the mad daughter of a wise mother. These daughters have too long dominated the earth. By appreciation, we make excellence in others our own property. To succeed in the world it is not enough to be stupid, you must also be well-mannered. What most persons consider as virtue, after the age of 40 is simply a loss of energy. The progress of rivers to the ocean is not so rapid as that of man to error. In general, the art of government consists of taking as much money as possible from one class of citizens to give to another. The art of medicine consists in amusing the patient while nature cures the disease. It is vain for the coward to flee, death follows close behind, it is only by defying it that the brave escape. Each player must accept the cards life deals him or her, but once they are in hand, he or she alone must decide how to play the cards in order to win the game. The secret of being a bore is to tell everything. The mouth obeys poorly when the heart murmurs. It is better to risk saving a guilty man than to condemn an innocent one. I hate women because they always know where things are. All men are born with a nose and 5 fingers, but no one is born with a knowledge of God. Nature has always had more force than education. How pleasant it is for a father to sit at his child's board. It is like an aged man reclining under the shadow of an oak which he has planted. The best is the enemy of the good. The safest course is to do nothing against one's conscience. With this secret, we can enjoy life and have no fear from death. Friendship is the marriage of the soul, and this marriage is liable to divorce. The flowery style is not unsuitable to public speeches or addresses, which amount only to compliment. The lighter beauties are in their place when there is nothing more solid to say, but the flowery style ought to be banished from a pleading, a sermon, or a didactic work. No problem can withstand the assault of sustained thinking. When it is a question of money, everybody is of the same religion. To hold a pen is to be at war. Perfection is attained by slow degrees, it requires the hand of time. I die adoring God, loving my friends, not hating my enemies, and detesting superstition. I have lived 80 years of life and know nothing for it, but to be resigned and tell myself that flies are born to be eaten by spiders and man to be devoured by sorrow. Faith consists in believing when it is beyond the power of reason to believe. I have never made but one prayer to God, a very short one, O Lord, make my enemies ridiculous. And God granted it. It is lamentable, that to be a good patriot one must become the enemy of the rest of mankind. To the living we owe respect, but to the dead we owe only the truth. God is not on the side of the big battalions, but on the side of those who shoot best. The instruction we find in books is like fire. We fetch it from our neighbors, kindle it at home, communicate it to others, and it becomes the property of all. It is not known precisely where angels dwell, whether in the air, the void, or the planets. It has not been God's pleasure that we should be informed of their abode. It is forbidden to kill, therefore all murderers are punished unless they kill in large numbers and to the sound of trumpets. The opportunity for doing mischief is found 100 times a day, and of doing good once in a year. To believe in God is impossible, not to believe in Him is absurd. This self-love is the instrument of our preservation, it resembles the provision for the perpetuity of mankind, it is necessary, it is dear to us, it gives us pleasure, and we must conceal it. We never live, we are always in the expectation of living. When men do not have healthy notions of the divinity, false ideas supplant them, just as in bad times one uses counterfeit money when there is no good money. We are all full of weakness and errors, let us mutually pardon each other our follies, it is the first law of nature. Meditation is the dissolution of thoughts in eternal awareness or pure consciousness without objectification, knowing without thinking, merging finitude in infinity. Originality is nothing but judicious imitation. The most original writers borrowed one from another. It is not love that should be depicted as blind, but self-love. He must be very ignorant, for he answers every question he is asked. The public is a ferocious beast, one must either chain it or flee from it. We cannot always oblige, but we can always speak obligingly. The ancient Romans built their greatest masterpieces of architecture, their amphitheaters, for wild beasts to fight in. The husband who decides to surprise his wife is often very much surprised himself. If God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him. Of all religions, the Christian should of course inspire the most tolerance, but until now Christians have been the most intolerant of all men. All the reasonings of men are not worth one sentiment of women. Ice cream is exquisite, what a pity it isn't illegal. In the case of news, we should always wait for the sacrament of confirmation. Men use thought only as authority for their injustice, and employ speech only to conceal their thoughts. Chance is a word void of sense, nothing can exist without a cause. The truths of religion are never so well understood as by those who have lost the power of reason. It is not enough to conquer, one must learn to seduce. Life is thickly sown with thorns, and I know no other remedy than to pass quickly through them. The longer we dwell on our misfortunes, the greater is their power to harm us. We must distinguish between speaking to deceive and being silent to be reserved. We must cultivate our own garden. When man was put in the Garden of Eden, he was put there so that he should work, which proves that man was not born to rest. Let us read and let us dance, two amusements that will never do any harm to the world. Very often, say what you will, a knave is only a fool. The true triumph of reason is that it enables us to get along with those who do not possess it. If God created us in His own image, we have more than reciprocated. The little may contrast with the great, in painting, but cannot be said to be contrary to it. Oppositions of colors contrast, but there are also colors contrary to each other, that is, which produce an ill effect because they shock the eye when brought very near it. The ear is the avenue to the heart. Woe to the makers of literal translations, who by rendering every word weaken the meaning. It is indeed by so doing that we can say the letter kills and the spirit gives life. Think for yourselves and let others enjoy the privilege to do so, too. Love is a canvas furnished by nature and embroidered by imagination. We are rarely proud when we are alone. When he to whom one speaks does not understand, and he who speaks himself does not understand, that is metaphysics. It is dangerous to be right in matters on which the established authorities are wrong. It is one of the superstitions of the human mind to have imagined that virginity could be a virtue. The world embarrasses me, and I cannot dream that this watch exists and has no watchmaker. He who is not just is severe, he who is not wise is sad. He who has not the spirit of this age, has all the misery of it. The ancients recommended us to sacrifice to the Graces, but Milton sacrificed to the devil. Men hate the individual whom they call avaricious only because nothing can be gained from him. There are truths which are not for all men, nor for all times. Weakness on both sides is, as we know, the motto of all quarrels. Froth at the top, dregs at bottom, but the middle excellent. What then do you call your soul? What idea have you of it? You cannot of yourselves, without revelation, admit the existence within you of anything but a power unknown to you of feeling and thinking. Tyrants have always some slight shade of virtue, they support the laws before destroying them. We have a natural right to make use of our pens as of our tongue, at our peril, risk and hazard. It is not sufficient to see and to know the beauty of a work. We must feel and be affected by it. He was a great patriot, a humanitarian, a loyal friend, provided, of course, he really is dead. The sovereign is called a tyrant who knows no laws but his caprice. Who serves his country well has no need of ancestors. Nothing would be more tiresome than eating and drinking if God had not made them a pleasure as well as a necessity. Every one goes astray, but the least imprudent are they who repent the soonest. Indeed, history is nothing more than a tableau of crimes and misfortunes. Use, do not abuse, neither abstinence nor excess ever renders man happy. One great use of words is to hide our thoughts. Anyone who seeks to destroy the passions instead of controlling them is trying to play the angel. Opinion has caused more trouble on this little earth than plagues or earthquakes. I should like to lie at your feet and die in your arms. The best government is a benevolent tyranny tempered by an occasional assassination. We cannot wish for that we know not. Very learned women are to be found, in the same manner as female warriors, but they are seldom or ever inventors. He is a hard man who is only just, and a sad one who is only wise. Our country is that spot to which our heart is bound. Satire lies about literary men while they live, and eulogy lies about them when they die. I am very fond of truth, but not at all of martyrdom. The Holy Roman Empire is neither holy, nor Roman, nor an empire. History is only the register of crimes and misfortunes. Doubt is not a pleasant condition, but certainty is absurd. The first step, my son, which one makes in the world, is the one on which depends the rest of our days. Time, which alone makes the reputation of men, ends by making their defects respectable. I know many books which have bored their readers, but I know of none which has done real evil. He shines in the second rank, who is eclipsed in the first. Religion was instituted to make us happy in this life and in the other. What must we do to be happy in the life to come? Be just. Wherever there is a settled society, religion is necessary. The laws cover manifest crimes, and religion covers secret crimes. One merit of poetry few persons will deny: it says more and in fewer words than prose. Love has features which pierce all hearts. He wears a bandage which conceals the faults of those beloved. He has wings, he comes quickly and flies away the same. What a heavy burden is a name that has become too famous. The infinitely little have a pride infinitely great. Governments need to have both shepherds and butchers. The multitude of books is making us ignorant. Divorce is probably of nearly the same date as marriage. I believe, however, that marriage is some weeks the more ancient. Let us work without theorizing, 'tis the only way to make life endurable. All styles are good except the tiresome kind. Society therefore is as ancient as the world. It is the flash which appears, the thunderbolt will follow. In every author let us distinguish the man from his works. Let the punishments of criminals be useful. A hanged man is good for nothing, a man condemned to public work still serves the country, and is a living lesson. Such is the feebleness of humanity, such is its perversity, that doubtless it is better for it to be subject to all possible superstitions, as long as they are not murderous, than to live without religion. When we hear news we should always wait for the sacrament of confirmation. Shun idleness is the rust that attaches itself to the most brilliant metals. Men who are occupied in the restoration of health to other men, by the joint exertion of skill and humanity, are above all the great of the earth. They even partake of divinity, since to preserve and renew is almost as noble as to create. Nature has made us frivolous to console us for our miseries. Men appear to prefer to ruin one another's fortunes, and to cut each other's throats over a few miserable villages, than to extend the means of human happiness. Pleasure is the object, duty, and the goal of all rational creatures. If we do not find anything pleasant, at least we shall find something new. The pursuit of what is true and the practice of what is good are the two most important objects of philosophy. What will the preacher say? To teach men not to persecute men, for, while a few sanctimonious humbugs are burning a few fanatics, the earth opens and swallows up all alike. History is no more than the portrayal of crimes and misfortunes. Judge a person by their questions, rather than their answers. Judge a man by his questions rather than by his answers. It is hard to free fools from the chains they revere. Regimen is superior to medicine, especially as, from time immemorial, out of every 100 physicians, 98 are charlatans. Originality is nothing but judicious imitation. The most original writers borrowed one from another. I was never ruined but twice, once when I lost a lawsuit, once when I won one. We have a natural right to make use of our pens as of our tongues, at our peril, risk and hazard. Weakness on both sides is the motto of all quarrels. To a toad, what is beauty? A female with 2 pop eyes, a wide mouth, yellow belly, and spotted back. The punishment of criminals should serve a purpose. When a man is hanged he is useless. The public is a ferocious beast, one must either chain it up or flee from it. Every man is the creature of the age in which he lives, very few are able to raise themselves above the ideas of the time. Doctors are men who prescribe medicines of which they know little, to cure diseases of which they know less, in human beings of whom they know nothing. Doubt is not a pleasant mental state, but certainty is a ridiculous one. Doubt is not a pleasant condition, but certainty is an absurd one. Everything is for the best in this best of possible worlds. The United States has subcontracted Brazil for security and Canada for economic development. But they're all reporting to Washington. The final decisions are made there. I should stop myself from dying if a good joke or a good idea occurred to me. The secret of being tiresome is in telling everything. Say, believe as I do, or I shall assassinate you. No snowflake in an avalanche ever feels responsible. Animals have these advantages over man. They have no theologians to instruct them, their funerals cost them nothing, and no one starts lawsuits over their wills. You see many stars at night in the sky but find them not when the sun rises. Can you say that there are no stars in the heaven of day? So, O man, because you behold not God in the days of your ignorance, say not that there is no God. Your destiny is that of a man, and your vows those of a God. You must have the devil in you to succeed in any of the arts. A long dispute means that both parties are wrong. All people are equal, it is not birth, it is virtue alone that makes the difference. It is with books as with men, a very small number play a great part, the rest are lost in the multitude. The best way to be boring is to leave nothing out. Superstition sets the whole world in flames, philosophy quenches them. The fate of a nation is often dependent upon the good or bad digestion of a prime minister. In general, the art of government consists in taking as much money as possible from one party of the citizens to give to the other. I know of no great man except those who have rendered great services to the human race. If there were no God, it would be necessary to invent him. All kinds are good except the kind that bores you. The great consolation in life is to say what one thinks. It is not enough to be exceptionally mad, licentious, and fanatical in order to win a great reputation, it is still necessary to arrive on the scene at the right time. The atheists are for the most part imprudent and misguided scholars who reason badly, who, not being able to understand the creation, the origin of evil, and other difficulties, have recourse to the hypothesis, the eternity of things and of inevitability. Who are you, nature? I live in you. For 50 years I have been seeking you, and I have not found you yet. All is for the best in the best of all possible worlds. History is but the record of crimes and misfortunes. L'histoire n'est que le tableau de crimes et de malheurs. All the ancient histories, as one of our wits say, are just fables that have been agreed upon. Persistence with patience and prayer pays with profits, prosperity, and peace of mind. In all the disputes which have excited Christians against each other, Rome has invariably decided in favor of that opinion which tended most towards the suppression of the human intellect and the annihilation of the reasoning powers. Love truth, and pardon error. In this country we find it pays to shoot an admiral from time to time to encourage the others. Most of my life has been one tragedy after another, most of which hasn't happened. Everything I see about me is sowing the seeds of a revolution that is inevitable, though I shall not have the pleasure of seeing it. The lightning is so close at hand that it will strike at the first chance, and then there will be a pretty uproar. The young are fortunate, for they will see fine things. How inexpressible is the meanness of being a hypocrite! How horrible is it to be a mischievous and malignant hypocrite! Our priests are not what a silly populace supposes, all their learning consists in our credulity. Earth is an insane asylum, to which the other planets deport their lunatics. Quan celu a que l'on parle ne comprend pas et celu que parle ne se comprend pas, c'est de la métaphysique. When he to whom a person speaks does not understand, and he who speaks does not understand himself, that is metaphysics. Another century and there will not be a Bible on earth. What a pessimist you are! Exclaimed Candide. That is because I know what life is, said Martin. They are mad men, Jews, but you should not burn them for that. The Jews are of all peoples the grossest, the most ferocious, the most fanatical, and the most absurd. Fame is a heavy burden. History is the recital of facts represented as true. Fable, on the other hand, is the recital of facts represented as fiction. An infallible method of making fanatics is to persuade before you instruct. I have wanted to kill myself 1,000,000 times, but somehow I am still in love with life. It was decided by the University of Coimbra that the sight of several persons being slowly burned in great ceremony is an infallible secret for preventing earthquakes. A lady of honor may be raped once, but it strengthens her virtue. Observe that noses were made to wear spectacles, and so we have spectacles. Legs were visibly instituted to be breeched, and we have breeches. Stones were formed to be quarried and to build castles, and my lord has a very noble castle. The greatest baron in the province should have the best house. And as pigs were made to be eaten, we eat pork all year round. Consequently, those who have asserted all is well talk nonsense. They ought to have said that all is for the best. It would be easier to subjugate the entire universe through force than the minds of a single village. Indolence is sweet, and its consequences bitter. Work spares us from three evils: boredom, vice, and need. Now, my good man, this is no time for making enemies. The sentiment of justice is so natural, and so universally acquired by all mankind, that it seems to be independent of all law, all party, all religion. Men must have somewhat altered the course of nature, for they were not born wolves, yet they have become wolves. God did not give them 24-pounders or bayonets, yet they have made themselves bayonets and guns to destroy each other. In the same category I place not only bankruptcies, but the law which carries off the bankrupt's effects, so as to defraud their creditors. I am the best-natured creature in the world, and yet I have already killed 3, and of these 3 2 were priests. God has punished the knave, and the devil has drowned the rest. When His Highness sends a ship to Egypt, does he trouble his head whether the mice on board are at their ease or not? You write your name in the snow yet say nothing. Being a bird ain't all about flying and shitting from high places. Excellently observed, answered Candide, but let us cultivate our garden. She blushed and so did he. She greeted him in a faltering voice, and he spoke to her without knowing what he was saying. To a toad, what is beauty? A female with pop eyes, a wide mouth, yellow belly, and a spotted back. The women are never at a loss, God provides for them, let us run. Los Padres have everything and the people have nothing, 'tis the masterpiece of reason and justice. For my part, I know nothing so divine as Los Padres who make war on kings of Spain and Portugal and in Europe act as their confessors, who here kill Spaniards and at Madrid send them to heaven. All is but illusion and disaster. Such then is the human condition, that to wish greatness for one's country is to wish harm to one's neighbors. He wanted to know how they prayed to God in El Dorado. "We do not pray to him at all," said the reverend sage. "We have nothing to ask of him. He has given us all we want, and we give him thanks continually." I never approved either the errors of his book, or the trivial truths he so vigorously laid down. I have, however, stoutly taken his side when absurd men have condemned him for these same truths. What can I hope when all is right? Even in those cities which seem to enjoy the blessings of peace, and where the arts flourish, the inhabitants are devoured by envy, cares and anxieties, which are greater plagues than any experienced in a town when it is under siege. Had no need of a guide to learn ignorance. Martin in particular concluded that man was born to live either in the convulsions of misery, or in the lethargy of boredom. He was my equal in beauty, a paragon of grace and charm, sparkling with wit, and burning with love. I adored him to distraction, to the point of idolatry. I loved him as one can never love twice. I have chosen to be happy because it is good for my health. I should like to know which is worse, to be ravished 100 times by pirates, and have a buttock cut off, and run the gauntlet of the Bulgarians, and be flogged and hanged in an auto-da-fe, and be dissected, and have to row in a galley, in short, to undergo all the miseries we have each of us suffered, or simply to sit here and do nothing? That is a hard question, said Candide. Almost all life depends on probabilities. When truth is evident, it is impossible for parties and factions to rise. There never has been a dispute as to whether there is daylight at noon. Now, my good man, this is no time to be making enemies. Voltaire on his deathbed in response to a priest asking him that he renounce Satan. But nothing is more estimable than a physician who, having studied nature from his youth, knows the properties of the human body, the diseases which assail it, the remedies which will benefit it, exercises his art with caution, and pays equal attention to the rich and the poor. When a man is in love, jealous, and just whipped by the Inquisition, he is no longer himself. Secret griefs are more cruel than public calamities. I swear that, not being able to be yours, I will belong to no one. But in this country it is necessary, now and then, to put one admiral to death in order to inspire the others to fight. The wicked can have only accomplices, the voluptuous have companions in debauchery, self-seekers have associates, the politic assemble the factions, the typical idler has connections, princes have courtiers. Only the virtuous have friends. The best way to be boring is to include everything. History consists of a series of accumulated imaginative inventions. You must have the devil in you to succeed in the arts. History is filled with the sound of silken slippers going downstairs and wooden shoes coming up. Prejudice is opinion without judgment. You despise books, you whose lives are absorbed in the vanities of ambition, the pursuit of pleasure or indolence, but remember that all the known world, excepting only savage nations, is governed by books. Doubt is uncomfortable, certainty is ridiculous. Why are the Jews hated? It is the inevitable result of their laws. They either have to conquer everybody or be hated by the whole human race. God is always on the side of the heaviest battalions. If God did not exist, he would have to be invented. Now is not the time for making new enemies. Villains are undone by what is worst in them, heroes by what is best. My life's dream has been a perpetual nightmare. The composition of a tragedy requires testicles. When he who hears does not know what he who speaks means, and when he who speaks does not know what he himself means, that is philosophy. We are going to a new world, and no doubt it is there that everything is for the best. For it must be admitted that one might lament a little over the physical and moral happenings of our own world. Monsieur l'Abbé, I detest what you write, but I would give my life to make it possible for you to continue to write. I keep to old books, for they teach me something. From the new I learn very little. A small number of choice books are sufficient. Independence in the end is the fruit of injustice. When we cannot use the compass of mathematics or the torch of experience, it is certain we cannot take a single step forward. One of the chief misfortunes of honest people is that they are cowardly. Men fed upon carnage, and drinking strong drinks, have all an empoisoned and acrid blood which drives them mad in 100 different ways. Not all citizens can be equally strong, but they can all be equally free. Time is man's most precious asset. All men neglect it, all regret the loss of it, nothing can be done without it. Happiness is a good that nature sells us. In this country, England, it is good to kill an admiral from time to time, to encourage the others. The reference is to Admiral John Byng, who was executed in 1757 for failing to prevent the French from taking Minorca. Faith consists in believing not what seems true, but what seems false to our understanding. The Pope is an idol whose hands are tied and whose feet are kissed. The only way to see the value of a play is to see it acted. To enjoy life we must touch much of it lightly. This is no time to be making new enemies. The malevolence of men revealed itself to his mind in all of its ugliness. If we do not exert the right of eating our neighbor, it is because we have other means of making good cheer. To succeed in chaining the multitude, you must seem to wear the same fetters. Christians have been the most intolerant of all men. The superstitious man is to the rogue what the slave is to the tyrant. The right of commanding is no longer an advantage transmitted by nature, like an inheritance, it is the fruit of labors, the price of courage. A good action is preferable to an argument. What is faith? Is it to believe that which is evident? No. It is perfectly evident to my mind that there exists a necessary, eternal, supreme, and intelligent being. This is no matter of faith, but of reason. Shakespeare is a drunken savage with some imagination whose plays please only in London and Canada. It does not require great art, or magnificently trained eloquence, to prove that Christians should tolerate each other. I, however, am going further. I say that we should regard all men as our brothers. What? The Turk my brother, the Chinaman my brother, the Jew, the Siam? Yes, without doubt, are we not all children of the same Father and creatures of the same God? Men will commit atrocities as long as they believe absurdities. Whatever you do, crush the infamy. Once the people begin to reason, all is lost. Inspiration, a peculiar effect of divine flatulence emitted by the Holy Spirit which hisses into the ears of a few chosen of God. All events are linked together in the best of possible worlds, after all. If you had not been driven from a fine castle by being kicked in the backside for love of Miss Kungand, if you hadn't been sent before the Inquisition, if you hadn't traveled across America on foot, if you hadn't given a good sword thrust to the Baron, if you hadn't lost all your sheep from the good land of El Dorado, you wouldn't be sitting here eating candied citron and pistachios. That is very well put, said Candide, but we must cultivate our garden. The tyranny of the many would be when one body takes over the rights of others, and then exercises its power to change the laws in its favor. Love is a cloth which imagination embroiders. The deluge, a punishment inflicted on the human race by an all-knowing God, who, through not having foreseen the wickedness of men, repented of having made them, and drowned them once for all to make them better, an act which, as we all know, was accompanied by the greatest success. It is fancy rather than taste which produces so many new fashions. Everything happens through immutable laws, everything is necessary. There are, some persons say, some events which are necessary and others which are not. It would be very comic that one part of the world was arranged, and the other were not. That one part of what happens had to happen and that another part of what happens did not have to happen. If one looks closely at it, one sees that the doctrine contrary to that of destiny is absurd, but there are many people destined to reason badly, others not to reason at all, others to persecute those who reason. Now, you receive all your ideas, therefore you receive your wish, you wish therefore necessarily. The word liberty does not therefore belong in any way to your will. The will, therefore, is not a faculty that one can call free. A free will is an expression absolutely void of sense, and what the scholastics have called will of indifference, that is to say willing without cause, is a chimera unworthy of being combated. A long dispute means both parties are wrong. The way to become boring is to say everything. I also know that we should cultivate our gardens. Liberty, then, about which so many volumes have been written is, when accurately defined, only the power of acting. The true character of liberty is independence, maintained by force. I know of no great men except those who have rendered great service to the human race. Work is often the father of pleasure. Exaggeration, the inseparable companion of greatness. Man is not born wicked, he becomes so, as he becomes sick. The question of good and evil remains in irremediable chaos for those who seek to fathom it in reality. It is mere mental sport to the disputants, who are captives that play with their chains. To caress the serpent that devours us, until it has eaten away our heart. The discovery of what is true and the practice of that which is good are the two most important aims of philosophy. In every province, the chief occupations, in order of importance, are lovemaking, malicious gossip, and talking nonsense. Theology is to religion what poisons are to food. Whatever you do, crush the infamous thing, and love those who love you. But for what purpose was the earth formed? Asked Candide. To drive us mad, replied Martin. It is proved that things cannot be other than they are, for since everything was made for a purpose, it follows that everything is made for the best purpose. It is with books as with men, a very small number play a great part. Truth is a fruit that can only be picked and it is very ripe. Know that the secret of the arts is to correct nature. Atheism is the vice of a few intelligent people. If God has made us in His image, we have returned Him the favor. Those who believe absurdities will commit atrocities. The man who says to me, "Believe as I do, or God will damn you," will presently say, "Believe as I do, or I shall assassinate you." We adore, we invoke, we seek to appease, only that which we fear. If mankind were born tomorrow, it would divide into groups, each would scramble to invent their one and only God, and set about butchering each other. He is lifeless that is faultless. The adjective is the enemy of the noun. Variant, the adjective is the enemy of the substantive. If there were no God, it would have been necessary to invent Him. Chess is a game which reflects most honor on human wit. I serve your bone to my friends, but your volney I keep for myself. The effervescence of this fresh wine reveals the true brilliance of the French people. All sects are different, because they come from men. Morality is everywhere the same, because it comes from God. This is no time to make new enemies. It is impossible to translate poetry. Can you translate music? Shun idleness. It is rust that attaches itself to the most brilliant metals. The only way to compel men to speak good of us is to do it. The history of human opinion is scarcely anything more than the history of human errors. If there were only one religion in England, there would be danger of despotism. If there were two, they would cut each other's throats, but there are 30, and they live in peace and happiness. The superfluous is very necessary. No, nothing has the power to part me from you. Our love is based upon virtue, and will last as long as our lives. Individual misfortunes give rise to the general good, so that the more individual misfortunes exist, the more all is fine. The pride of every Jew finds cause to believe that the cause of their downfall is not their detestable politics, or ignorance of social graces, but the wrath of God. They believe it took a miracle to undo them. The Jews have always been waiting for a Messiah, but their Messiah is for them only, not for us. A Messiah who will give them mastery over the Christians. Everything can be borne except contempt. England has 42 religions and only 2 sauces. If you wish to converse with me, define your terms. Changing a habit is hard work. But it's harder to find work that would be more fulfilling. Your destiny is that of a man, your vows those of a god. A witty quote proves nothing. I envy animals for two things, their ignorance of evil to come, and their ignorance of what is said about them. All men have equal rights to liberty, to their property, and to the protection of the laws. Music is the pathway to the heart. If it's too silly to be said, it can always be sung. We look to Scotland for all our ideas of civilization. History is only the pattern of silken slippers descending the stairs to the thunder of hobnailed boots climbing upward from below. The man visited by ecstasies and visions, who takes dreams for realities is an enthusiast. The man who supports his madness with murder is a fanatic. An admiral should be put to death now and then to encourage the others. Men appear to prefer ruining one another's fortunes, and cutting each other's throats about a few paltry villages, to extending the grand means of human happiness. Heaven made virtue, man, the appearance. Those who think are excessively few, and those few do not set themselves to disturb the world. He who has heard the same thing told by 12,000 eyewitnesses has only 12,000 probabilities, which are equal to one strong probability, which is far from certain. All the persecutors declare against each other mortal war, while the philosopher, oppressed by them all, contents himself with pitying them. The instinct of a man is to pursue everything that flies from him, and to fly from all that pursue him. If there had been a censorship of the press in Rome, we should have had today neither Horace nor Juvenal, nor the philosophical writings of Cicero. Needless to say, since Christ's expiation, not one single Christian has been known to sin, or die. It is not a mistress I have lost, but half of myself, a soul for which my soul seems to have been made. It requires ages to destroy a popular opinion. A woman can keep one secret, the secret of her age. Whenever an important event, a revolution, or a calamity turns to the profit of the Church, such is always signalized as the finger of God. There's scarce a point whereon mankind agree, so well as in their boast of killing me. I boast of nothing, but when I've a mind, I think I can be even with mankind. He who can lead you to believe an absurdity can lead you to commit an atrocity. For 1700 years the Christian sect has done nothing but harm. What will the preacher say? To teach men not to persecute men, for, while a few sanctimonious humbugs are burning a few fanatics, the earth opens and swallows up all alike. God created women only to tame men. Fanaticism, to which men are so much inclined, has always served not only to render them more brutalized but more wicked. Those who can be made to believe absurdities can be made to commit atrocities. A fool is a person who guesses and gets it wrong. A clever man is one who guesses, regardless of time period, and gets it right. I confess that my stomach does not take to this style of cooking. I cannot accept calves' sweetbreads swimming in a salty sauce, nor can I eat mince consisting of turkey, hare, and rabbit, which they try to persuade me comes from a single animal. As for the cooks, I really cannot be expected to put up with this ham essence, nor the excessive quantity of morels and other mushrooms, pepper, and nutmeg with which they disguise perfectly good food. A circumstance which has always appeared wonderful to me, is that such sublime discoveries should have been made by the sole assistance of a quadrant and a little arithmetic. Those who are absent, by its means become present. It, male, is the consolation of life. Ask a toad what is beauty, he will answer that it is a female with two great round eyes coming out of her little head, a large flat mouth, a yellow belly and a brown back. It must be confessed that the inventors of the mechanical arts have been much more useful to men than the inventors of syllogisms. Custom, law bent my first years to the religion of the happy Muslims. I see it too clearly. The care taken of our childhood forms our feelings, our habits, our belief. By the Ganges, I would have been a slave of the false gods, a Christian in Paris, a Muslim here. A good cook is a certain slow poisoner, if you are not temperate. No one is ignorant that our character and turn of mind are intimately connected with the water closet. Give me a few minutes to talk away my face and I can seduce the Queen of France. All succeeds with people who are sweet and cheerful. The most genuine and efficacious charity is that which greases the paws of the priests. Such charity covers a multitude of sins. As you know, the Inquisition is an admirable and holy Christian invention to make the Pope and the monks more powerful and turn a whole kingdom into hypocrites. The Son of God is the same as the Son of Man, the Son of Man is the same as the Son of God. God, the Father, is the same as Christ, the Son, Christ, the Son, is the same as God, the Father. This language may appear confused to unbelievers, but Christians will readily understand it. In France every man is either an anvil or a hammer, he is a beater or must be beaten. Antiquity is full of the praises of another antiquity still more remote. All the arts are brothers, each one is a light to the others. The supposed right of intolerance is absurd and barbaric. It is the right of the tiger, nay, it is far worse, for tigers do but tear in order to have food, while we rend each other for paragraphs. We have our arts, the ancients had theirs. We cannot raise obelisks 100 feet high in a single piece, but our meridians are more exact. You can never correct your work well until you have forgotten it. All the known world, excepting only savage nations, is governed by books. He who dies before many witnesses always does so with courage. The policy of man consists, at first, in endeavoring to arrive at a state equal to that of animals, whom nature has furnished with food, clothing, and shelter. Since the whole affair had become one of religion, the vanquished were of course exterminated. Feeble verses are those which sin not against rules, but against genius. The more estimable the offender, the greater the torment. A physician is one who pours drugs of which he knows little into a body of which he knows less. The harmony of a concert, to which you listen with delight, must have on certain classes of minute animals the effect of terrible thunder, perhaps it kills them. There is no such thing as an accident. What we call by that name is the effect of some cause which we do not see. Before receiving your instruction, I must tell you what happened to me one day. I had just had a closet built at the end of my garden. I heard a mole arguing with a cockchafer. "Here's a fine structure," said the mole. "It must have been a very powerful mole who did this work." "You're joking," said the cockchafer. "It's a cockchafer full of genius who is the architect of this building." From that moment I resolved never to argue. I read these words which are the sum of all moral philosophy, and which cut short all the disputes of the casuists: when in doubt if an action is good or bad, refrain. Man is free the moment he wants to be. Nothing is more annoying than to be obscurely hanged. Never having been able to succeed in the world, he took his revenge by speaking ill of it. I am convinced that everything has come down to us from the banks of the Ganges: astronomy, astrology, metempsychosis, etc. The darkness is at its deepest, just before the sunrise. Friends should be preferred to kings. Meslier was the most singular phenomenon ever seen among all the meteors fatal to the Christian religion. Nothing is so common as to imitate one's enemies, and to use their weapons. Everyone places his good where he can and has as much of it as he can, in his own way. The institution of religion exists only to keep mankind in order, and to make men merit the goodness of God by their virtue. Everything in a religion which does not tend towards this goal must be considered foreign or dangerous. He was not the greatest of men, but he was the greatest of kings. Writing is the painting of the voice. Religion may be purified. This great work was begun 200 years ago, but men can only bear light to come in upon them by degrees. Slavery is also as ancient as war, and war as human nature. Common sense is both more rare and more desirable in leaders than mere intelligence. Pleasure has its time, so too has wisdom. Make love in thy youth, and in old age attend to thy salvation. Man can have only a certain number of teeth, hair, and ideas. There comes a time when he necessarily loses his teeth, hair, and ideas. Once your faith persuades you to believe what your intelligence declares absurd, beware, lest you likewise sacrifice your reason in the conduct of your life. A torch lighted in the forests of America set all Europe in conflagration. Doubt is not a very agreeable status, but certainty is a ridiculous one. Constant happiness is the philosopher's stone of the soul. The way to be a bore is to say everything. Wine is the divine juice of September. God prefers bad verses recited with a pure heart to the finest verses chanted by the wicked. Mortals are equal, their mask differs. In the matter of taxation, every privilege is an injustice. If the bookseller happens to desire a privilege for his merchandise, whether he is selling Rabelais or the Fathers of the Church, the magistrate grants the privilege without answering for the contents of the book. Voltaire, François-Marie Arouet Voltaire. The right to free speech is more important than the content of the speech. Men use thought only to justify their wrongdoings, and employ speech only to conceal their thoughts. Ilsnese servent de la pensée que pour autoriser leurs injustices, et employant les paroles que pour déguiser leurs pensées. The monster, fanaticism, still exists, and whoever seeks after truth will run the risk of being persecuted. One feels like crawling on all fours after reading your work. Of all religions, Christianity is without a doubt the one that should inspire tolerance most. Happiness is not the portion of man. A historian has many duties. The first is not to slander, the second is not to bore. What is called happiness is an abstract idea, composed of various ideas of pleasure, for he who has but a moment of pleasure is not a happy man. In like manner that a moment of grief constitutes not a miserable one. What is not in nature can never be true. One always speaks badly when one has nothing to say. Fear follows crime and is its punishment. Go get yourself crucified and then rise on the third day. It has taken seas of blood to drown the idol of despotism, but the English do not think they bought their laws too dearly. Learn to cultivate your own garden. If God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him. Let us worship God through Jesus if we must, if ignorance has so far prevailed that this name can still be spoken in all seriousness without being taken as a synonym for rapine and carnage. Every sensible man, every honorable man, must hold the Christian sect in horror. He who is involved in ecstasies and visions, who takes dreams for reality, and his own imagination for prophecy, is a fanatical novice of great hope and promise, and will soon advance to the higher stage and kill men for the love of God. There is only one morality, as there is only one geometry. If there are atheists, who is to be blamed if not the mercenary tyrants of souls who, in revolting us against their swindles, compel some feeble spirits to deny the God whom these monsters dishonor? The road to the heart is the ear. The first clergyman was the first rascal who met the first fool. Change everything except your loves. Let us meet 4 times a year in a grand temple with music, and thank God for all his gifts. There is one Son. There is one God. Let us have one religion. Then all mankind will be brethren. The Bible. That is what fools have written, what imbeciles commend, what rogues teach and young children are made to learn by heart. The man who, in a fit of melancholy, kills himself today, would have wished to live had he waited a week. Translations increase the faults of a work and spoil its beauties. Why, since we are always complaining of our ills, are we constantly employed in redoubling them? I know of nothing more laughable than a doctor who does not die of old age. If you want to kill Christianity, you must abolish Sunday. You see, mademoiselle, I have experience, I know the world. To pass the time, why don't you ask every passenger to tell you his life story? And if there is a single one among them who has never cursed his life, who has not often told himself that he was the unhappiest of men, then you may throw me overboard, head first. Every beauty, when out of its place, is a beauty no longer. We must cultivate our own garden. Le mieux est l'ennemi du bien. The perfect is the enemy of the good. Providence has given us hope and sleep as a compensation for the many cares of life. Dogs, monkeys, and parrots are 1,000 times less miserable than we are. There are men who can think no deeper than a fact. The human brain is a complex organ with the wonderful power of enabling man to find reasons for continuing to believe whatever it is that he wants to believe. There are some that only employ words for the purpose of disguising their thoughts. Is politics nothing other than the art of deliberately lying? The Jewish nation dares to display an irreconcilable hatred toward all nations, and revolts against all masters, always superstitious, always greedy for the well-being enjoyed by others, always barbarous, cringing in misfortune and insolent in prosperity. Nothing could be smarter, more splendid, more brilliant, better drawn up than two armies. Trumpets, fifes, hautboys, drums, cannons, formed a harmony such as never been heard in hell. To really enjoy pleasures, you must know how to leave them. Hope should no more be a virtue than fear. We fear and we hope, according to what is promised or threatened us. He who cannot shine by thought, seeks to bring himself into notice by a witticism. I have seen men incapable of the sciences, but never any incapable of virtue. A false science makes atheists, a true science prostrates men before the deity. I was never ruined but twice, once when I lost a lawsuit, and once when I won one. The passions are the winds which fill the sails of the vessel, they sink it at times, but without them it would be impossible to make way. Do well and you will have no need for ancestors. It is the triumph of superior reason to live with folks who don't have any. History is the lie commonly agreed upon. Whoever serves his country well has no need of ancestors. If we believe absurdities, we shall commit atrocities. Men are equal, it is not birth but virtue that makes the difference. It is love, the comfort of the human species, the preserver of the universe, the soul of all sentient beings, love, tender love. It is an infantile superstition of the human spirit that virginity would be thought a virtue and not the barrier that separates ignorance from knowledge. It requires 20 years for a man to rise from the vegetable state in which he is within his mother's womb, and from the pure animal state which is the lot of his early childhood, to the state when the maturity of reason begins to appear. It has required 30 centuries to learn a little about his structure. It would need eternity to learn something about his soul. It takes an instant to kill him. Injustice in the end produces independence. The superfluous, a very necessary thing. As long as people believe in absurdities, they will continue to commit atrocities. Come. You presents will either give me life or kill me with pleasure. History should be written as philosophy. My life is a struggle. This poem will never reach its destination. On Rousseau's Ode to Posterity. History is the study of the world's crime. Paradise is where I am. If this is the best of possible worlds, what then are the others? Madness is to think of too many things in succession too fast, or of one thing too exclusively. A yawn may not be polite, but at least it is an honest opinion. To make a vow for life is to make oneself a slave. Where some states possess an army, the Prussian army possesses a state. Doctors put drugs of which they know little into bodies of which they know less for diseases of which they know nothing at all. Anyone who has the power to make you believe absurdities has the power to make you commit injustices. Life is bristling with thorns, and I know no other remedy than to cultivate one's garden. What is toleration? It is the prerogative of humanity. We are all steeped in weaknesses and errors. Let us forgive one another's follies. It is the first law of nature. Optimism, said Cacambo, what is that? Alas! Replied Candide, it is the obstinacy of maintaining that everything is best when it is worst. Men argue. Nature acts. Ideas are like beards, men do not have them until they grow up. Every sensible man, every honorable man, must hold the Christian sect in horror. Christianity is the most ridiculous, the most absurd and bloody religion that has ever infected the world. Nothing can be more contrary to religion and the clergy than reason and common sense. If we believe absurdities, we shall commit atrocities. God is a circle whose center is everywhere and circumference nowhere. I loved him as we always love for the first time, with idolatry and wild passion. You are very harsh. I have seen the world. You will notice that in all disputes between Christians since the birth of the Church, Rome has always favored the doctrine which most completely subjugated the human mind and annihilated reason. You're a bitter man, said Candide. That's because I've lived, said Martin. History is a pack of lies we play on the dead. It is reported in the supplement of the Council of Nicene that the Fathers, being very perplexed to know which were the cryphal or apocryphal books of the Old and New Testaments, put them all pell-mell on an altar, and the books to be rejected fell to the ground. It is a pity that this eloquent procedure has not survived. Je ne suis pas d'accord avec ce que vous dites, mais je défendrai jusqu'au la mort le droit que vous avez de le dire. I do not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. It is ourselves alone that make our days lucky or unlucky. Away, then, with a vain prejudice, the invention of the priesthood, which has been transmitted by our ancestors to an ignorant people. A man loved by a beautiful woman will always get out of trouble. For 1,000 volumes of metaphysics will not teach us what the soul is. This agglomeration which was called and which still calls itself the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy, nor Roman, nor an empire. Wherever my travels may lead, paradise is where I am. Historians are gossips who tease the dead. God created woman to tame man. I would rather obey a fine lion, much stronger than myself, than 200 rats of my own species. Whatever you do, trample down abuses, and love those who love you. Different translation, whatever you do, crush the infamous thing superstition, and love those who love you. Only your friends steal your books. I read only to please myself, and enjoy only what suits my taste. Virtue debases itself in justifying itself. Errors flies from mouth to mouth, from pen to pen, and to destroy it takes ages. The spirit of property doubles a man's strength. There can be no happiness without good health. History is nothing but a pack of tricks that we play upon the dead. Men are in general so tricky, so envious, and so cruel that when we find one who is only weak, we are too happy. God created sex. Priests created marriage. Life is a shipwreck, but we must not forget to sing in the lifeboats. Let each of us boldly and honestly say, how little it is that I really know. He who thinks himself wise, O heavens, is a great fool. May God defend me from my friends, I can defend myself from my enemies. Prejudice is an opinion without judgment. All the citizens of a state cannot be equally powerful, but they may be equally free. It is the first law of friendship that it has to be cultivated. The second is to be indulgent when the first law is neglected. Tears are the silent language of grief. Philosopher, a lover of wisdom, which is to say, truth. You have no control over the hand that life deals you, but how you play that hand is entirely up to you. We are all guilty of the good we did not do. The opinion of all lawyers, the unanimous cry of the nation, and the good of the state, are in themselves a law. And ask each passenger to tell his story, and if there is one of them all who has not cursed his existence many times, and said to himself over and over again that he was the most miserable of men, I give you permission to throw me headfirst into the sea. I have wanted to kill myself 100 times, but somehow I am still in love with life. This ridiculous weakness is perhaps one of our more stupid melancholy propensities, for is there anything more stupid than to be eager to go on carrying a burden which one would gladly throw away, to loathe one's very being and yet to hold it fast, to fondle the snake that devours us until it has eaten our hearts away? Let us cultivate our garden. Among the illusions which have invested our civilization is an absolute belief that the solutions to our problems must be a more determined application of rationally organized expertise. The reality is that our problems are largely the product of that application. History never repeats itself. Man always does. The art of government is to make 2/3 of a nation pay all it possibly can pay for the benefit of the other third. All men are born with a nose and 10 fingers, but no one was born with a knowledge of God. Despite the enormous quantity of books, how few people read. And if one reads profitably, one would realize how much stupid stuff the vulgar herd is content to swallow every day. Faith consists in believing what reason cannot. Dare to think for yourself. Marriage is the only adventure open to the cowardly. It is not more surprising to be born twice than once. Everything in nature is resurrection. I cannot imagine how the clockwork of the universe can exist without a clockmaker. It is not inequality which is the real misfortune, it is dependence. War is the greatest of all crimes, and yet there is no aggressor who does not color his crime with the pretext of justice. To achieve a goal, a dream, a wish, you must plan it out for success. Everything's fine today, that is our illusion. It is amusing that a virtue is made of the vice of chastity, and it's a pretty odd sort of chastity at that, which leads men straight into the sin of Onan, and girls to the waning of their color. Clever tyrants are never punished. If we would destroy the Christian religion, we must first of all destroy man's belief in the Bible. Our wretched species is so made that those who walk on the well-trodden path always throw stones at those who are showing a new road. The happiest of all lives is a busy solitude. Liberty of thought is the life of the soul. Answer me, you who believe that animals are only machines. Has nature arranged for this animal to have all the machinery of feelings only in order for it not to have any at all? Fools have a habit of believing that everything written by a famous author is admirable. For my part, one read only to please myself and like only what suits my taste. The most important decision you make is to be in a good mood. Love truth, but pardon error. Every sensible man, every honest man, must hold the Christian sect in horror. But what shall we substitute in its place? You say, what? A ferocious animal has sucked the blood of my relatives. I tell you to rid yourselves of this beast, and you ask me what you shall put in its place. Common sense is not so common. Reading nurtures the soul, and an enlightened friend brings it solace. Men will always be mad, and those who think they can cure them are the maddest of all. Cherish those who seek the truth, but beware of those who find it. The multiplicity of facts and writings is become so great that everything must soon be reduced to extracts and dictionaries. Truth is a fruit which should not be plucked until it is ripe. Will is wish, and liberty is power. For can anything be sillier than to insist on carrying a burden one would continually much rather throw to the ground? The comfort of the rich depends upon an abundant supply of the poor. We are obliged to place ourselves on the level of our age before we can rise above it. Paper money eventually returns to its intrinsic value, zero. Our labor preserves us from three great evils: weariness, vice, and want. It is the characteristic of the most stringent censorships that they give credibility to the opinions they attack. Discord is the great ill of mankind, and tolerance is the only remedy for it. A witty saying proves nothing. We all look for happiness, but without knowing where to find it, like drunkards who look for their house, knowing dimly that they have one. Every man is a creature of the age in which he lives, and few are able to raise themselves above the ideas of the time. It is up to us to cultivate our garden. Alas! I too have known love, that ruler of hearts, that soul of our soul. It's never brought me anything except one kiss and 20 kicks in the rump. How could such a beautiful cause produce such an abominable effect on you? All is a miracle. The stupendous order of nature, the revolution of 100 millions of worlds around a million of stars, the activity of light, the life of all animals, all are grand and perpetual miracles. Virtue between men is a commerce of good actions. He who has no part in this commerce must not be reckoned. One should always aim at being interesting, rather than exact. Let us confess it, evil strides the world. Where there is friendship, there is our natural soil. There is an astonishing imagination, even in the science of mathematics. We repeat, there was far more imagination in the head of Archimedes than in that of Homer. So it is the human condition that to wish for the greatness of one's fatherland is to wish evil to one's neighbors. The citizen of the universe would be the man who wishes his country never to be either greater or smaller, richer or poorer. Let us help one another to bear our burdens. I advise you to go on living solely to enrage those who are paying your annuities. It is the only pleasure I have left. Democracy is just a filler for textbooks. Do you actually believe that public opinion influences the government? Whosoever does not know how to recognize the faults of great men is incapable of estimating their perfections. Minds differ still more than faces. The only way to comprehend what mathematicians mean by infinity is to contemplate the extent of human stupidity. If you have two religions in your land, the two will cut each other's throats, but if you have 30 religions, they will dwell in peace. We're neither pure, nor wise, nor good, we do the best we know. The more I read, the more I acquire, the more certain I am that I know nothing. The greatest consolation in life is to say what one thinks. The more he became truly wise, the more he distrusted everything he knew. Being unable to make people more reasonable, I preferred to be happy away from them. If you want good laws, burn those you have and make new ones. My soul is the mirror of the universe, and my body is its frame. What can you say to a man who tells you he prefers obeying God rather than men, and that as a result he's certain he'll go to heaven if he cuts your throat? Sensual pleasure passes and vanishes, but the friendship between us, the mutual confidence, the delight of the heart, the enchantment of the soul, these things do not perish and can never be destroyed. It is clear that the individual who persecutes a man, his brother, because he is not of the same opinion, is a monster. When you arise in the morning, give thanks for the morning light, for your life and strength. Give thanks for your food, and the joy of living. Tecumseh appreciation is a wonderful thing, it makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well. A clergyman is one who feels himself called upon to live without working at the expense of the rascals who work to live. Theological religion is the source of all imaginable follies and disturbances. It is the parent of fanaticism and civil discord, it is the enemy of mankind. It is as impossible to translate poetry as it is to translate music. The more a man knows, the less he talks. The fate of a nation has often depended upon the good or bad digestion of a prime minister. Prejudices are what fools use for reason. The longer we dwell on our misfortunes, the greater is their power to harm us. Virtuous men alone possess friends. Christianity is the most ridiculous, the most absurd and bloody religion that has ever infected the world. All pleasantry should be short, and it might even be as well were the serious short also. Descartes constructed as noble a road of science, from the point at which he found geometry to that to which he carried it, as Newton himself did after him. He carried this spirit of geometry and invention into optics, which under him became a completely new art. The prudent man does himself good, the virtuous one does it to other men. The famous physician Dumoulin said when dying, "I leave two great physicians behind me, simple food and pure water." The abuse of grace is affectation, as the abuse of the sublime is absurdity, all perfection is nearly a fault. Stand upright, speak thy thoughts, declare the truth thou hast, that all may share, be bold, proclaim it everywhere, they only live who dare. True power and true politeness are above vanity. Animals have these advantages over man, they never hear the clock strike, they die without any idea of death, they have no theologians to instruct them. Their last moments are not disturbed by unwelcome and unpleasant ceremonies, their funerals cost them nothing, and no one starts lawsuits over their wills. Fanaticism is a monster that pretends to be the child of religion. To pray to God is to flatter oneself that with words one can alter nature. The pursuit of pleasure must be the goal of every rational person. Present opportunities are not to be neglected, they rarely visit us twice. Opinion is called the queen of the world. It is so, for when reason opposes it, it is condemned to death. It must rise 20 times from its ashes to gradually drive away the usurper. History is fables agreed upon. He who doesn't have the spirit of his time, has all its misery. There are no sects in geometry. Everyone should be his own physician. We ought to assist, and not to force nature. Eat with moderation, nothing is good for the body but what we can digest. What medicine can procure digestion? Exercise. What will recruit strength? Sleep. Let all the laws be clear, uniform and precise, for interpreting laws is almost always to corrupt them. The biggest reward for a thing well done is to have done it. No opinion is worth burning your neighbor for. It is only through timidity that states are lost. There are barbarians who seize this dog, who so prodigiously surpasses man in friendship, and nail him down to a table, and dissect him alive to show you the mesaraic veins. Answer me, machinist, has nature really arranged all the springs of feeling in this animal to the end that he might not feel? Has he nerves that he may be incapable of suffering? Often the prudent, far from making their destinies, succumb to them. François. I have no more than 20 acres of ground, he replied, the whole of which I cultivate myself with the help of my children, and our labor keeps off from us the three great evils, boredom, vice, and want. Give me the patience for the small things of life, courage for the great trials of life. Help me to do my best each day and then go to sleep knowing God is awake. The system of Descartes seemed to give a plausible reason for all those phenomena, and this reason seemed more just, as it is simple and intelligible to all capacities. But in philosophy, a student ought to doubt of the things he fancies he understands too easily, as much as of those he does not understand. Men who have seen life and death, as an unbroken continuum, the swinging pendulum, have been able to move as freely into death as they walked through life. Socrates went to the grave almost perplexed by his companion's tears. We admit, in geometry, not only infinite magnitudes, that is to say, magnitudes greater than any assignable magnitude, but infinite magnitudes infinitely greater, the one than the other. This astonishes our dimension of brains, which is only about 6 inches long, 5 broad, and 6 in depth, in the largest heads. Superstition sets the whole world in flames, but philosophy douses them. Originality is nothing but judicious plagiarism. A multitude of laws in a country is like a great number of physicians, a sign of weakness and malady. A witty saying proves nothing, but saying something pointless gets people's attention. Luxury has been railed at for 2,000 years, in verse and in prose, and it has always been loved. He who seeks truth should be of no country. A physician is an unfortunate gentleman who is every day required to perform a miracle, namely to reconcile health with intemperance. One always begins with the simple, then comes the complex, and by superior enlightenment one often reverts in the end to the simple. Such is the course of human intelligence. What? Have you no monks to teach, to dispute, to govern, to intrigue and to burn people who do not agree with them? Language is a very difficult thing to put into words. We are astonished at thought, but sensation is equally wonderful. True greatness consists in the use of a powerful understanding to enlighten oneself and others. I had been 100 times on the point of killing myself, but still was fond of life. This ridiculous weakness is perhaps one of our worst instincts. What can be more absurd than choosing to carry a burden that one really wants to throw to the ground? To detest, and yet to strive to preserve our existence. To caress the serpent that devours us, and hug him close to our bosoms till he has gnawed into our hearts. Fear could never make virtue. To the wicked, everything serves as pretext. Great men have all been formed either before academies or independent of them. If there's life on other planets, then the Earth is the universe's insane asylum. Perfect is the enemy of good. So long as the people do not care to exercise their freedom, those who wish to tyrannize will do so, for tyrants are active and ardent, and will devote themselves in the name of any number of gods, religious and otherwise, to put shackles upon sleeping men. The rude beginnings of every art acquire a greater celebrity than the art in perfection. He who first played the fiddle was looked upon as a demigod. I am a little deaf, a little blind, a little important, and on top of this are 2 or 3 abominable infirmities, but nothing destroys my hope. Poetry is the music of the soul, and, above all, of great and feeling souls. Love has various lodgings. The same word does not always signify the same thing. All men are by nature free, you have therefore an undoubted liberty to depart whenever you please, but will have many and great difficulties to encounter in passing the frontiers. The only reward to be expected from literature is contempt if one fails and hatred if one succeeds. It is far better to be silent than merely to increase the quantity of bad books. But there must be some pleasure in condemning everything, in perceiving faults where others think they see beauties. You mean there is pleasure in having no pleasure? It is the poverty connected with our species which subordinates one man to another. It is not inequality which is the real misfortune, it is dependence. If one does not reflect, one thinks oneself master of everything, but when one does reflect, one realizes that one is master of nothing. Let us leave every man at liberty to seek into him and to lose himself in his ideas. We are intelligent beings. Intelligent beings cannot have been formed by a crude, blind, insensible being. There is certainly some difference between the ideas of Newton and the dung of a mule. Newton's intelligence, therefore, came from another intelligence. A good imitation is the most perfect originality. A little evil is often necessary for obtaining a great good. Which is more dangerous, fanaticism or atheism? Fanaticism is certainly 1,000 times more deadly, for atheism inspires no bloody passion whereas fanaticism does. Atheism is opposed to crime and fanaticism causes crimes to be committed. Prejudices are what rule the vulgar crowd. Be bold, proclaim it everywhere, they only live who dare. It is with books as with the fires of our grates, everybody borrows a light from his neighbor to kindle his own, which in turn is communicated to others, and each partakes of all. If God did not exist, he would have to be invented. But all nature cries aloud that he does exist, that there is a supreme intelligence, an immense power, an admirable order, and everything teaches us our own dependence on it. Nothing can be more contrary to religion and the clergy than reason and common sense. If you are attacked as regards your style, never reply, it is for your work alone to make answer. Self-love is the instrument of our preservation. Let us therefore reject all superstition in order to become more human, but in speaking against fanaticism, let us not imitate the fanatics. They are sick men in delirium who want to chastise their doctors. Let us assuage their ills, and never embitter them, and let us pour drop by drop into their souls the divine balm of toleration, which they would reject with horror if it were offered to them all at once. What would constitute useful history? That which should teach us our duties and our rights, without appearing to teach them. An ideal form of government is democracy tempered with assassination. We offer up prayers to God only because we have made him after our own image. We treat him like a pasha, or a sultan, who is capable of being exasperated and appeased. What is madness? To have erroneous perceptions and to reason correctly from them. There are two things for which animals are to be envied, they know nothing of future evils, or of what people say about them. What is history? The lie that everyone agrees on. To announce truths is an infallible receipt for being persecuted. Verses which do not teach men new and moving truths do not deserve to be read. The punishment of criminals should be of use. When a man is hanged, he is good for nothing. The necessity of saying something, the embarrassment produced by the consciousness of having nothing to say, and the desire to exhibit ability, are three things sufficient to render even a great man ridiculous. What is tolerance? It is the consequence of humanity. Everything you say should be true, but not everything true should be said. There is a pleasure in not being pleased. Better is the enemy of good. Do you think that men have always massacred each other, as they do today? Have they always been liars, cheats, traitors, brigands, weak, flighty, cowardly, envious, gluttonous, drunken, grasping, and vicious, bloody, backbiting, debauched, fanatical, hypocritical, and silly? It is not the answers you give, but the questions you ask. If you wish to obtain a great name or to found an establishment, be completely mad, but be sure that your madness corresponds with the turn and temper of your age. 20-volume folios will never make a revolution. It's the little pocket pamphlets that are to be feared. We know that all the arts are brothers, that each of them illuminates another, and that a universal light results. Religion began when the first scoundrel met the first fool. One day everything will be well, that is our hope. Everything's fine today, that is our illusion. It would be very singular that all nature, all the planets, should obey eternal laws, and that there should be a little animal 5 feet high, who, in contempt of these laws, could act as he pleased, solely according to his caprice. How I like the boldness of the English, how I like the people who say what they think. If you want to know who controls you, look at who you are not allowed to criticize. Every man can educate himself. It's shameful to put one's mind into the hands of those whom you wouldn't entrust with your money. Dare to think for yourself. We only half live when we only half think. History in general is a collection of crimes, follies, and misfortunes among which we have now and then met with a few virtues, and some happy times. Thought depends absolutely on the stomach, but in spite of that, those who have the best stomachs are not the best thinkers. Pleasantry is never good on serious points, because it always regards subjects in that point of view in which it is not the purpose to consider them. Anything too stupid to be said is sung. Adultery is an evil only inasmuch as it is a theft, but we do not steal that which is given to us. The worthy administrators of justice are like a cat set to take care of a cheese, lest it should be gnawed by the mice. One bite of the cat does more damage to the cheese than 20 mice can do. Fools admire everything in an author of reputation. Men, generally going with the stream, seldom judge for themselves, and purity of taste is almost as rare as talent. When one man speaks to another man who doesn't understand him, and when a man who's speaking no longer understands, it's metaphysics. Our character is composed of our ideas and our feelings, and, since it has been proved that we give ourselves neither feelings nor ideas, our character does not depend on us. If it did depend on us, there is nobody who would not be perfect. If one does not reflect, one thinks oneself master of everything, but when one does reflect, one realizes that one is master of nothing. What can we say with certainty? I have no morals, yet I am a very moral person. Beware of the words internal security, for they are the eternal cry of the oppressor. The most amazing and effective inventions are not those which do most honor to the human genius. The man who leaves money to charity in his will is only giving away what no longer belongs to him. People must have renounced, it seems to me, all natural intelligence to dare to advance that animals are but animated machines. It appears to me, besides, that such people can never have observed with attention the character of animals, not to have distinguished among them the different voices of need, of suffering, of joy, of pain, of love, of anger, and of all their affections. It would be very strange that they should express so well what they could not feel. There is an astonishing imagination, even in the science of mathematics. The hallmark of a free society is that I may totally disapprove of what you say, but I'll defend your right to say it until I die. The superfluous is the most necessary. Don't think money does everything, or you are going to end up doing everything for money. I don't know where I am going, but I am on my way. It is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong. The more often a stupidity is repeated, the more it gets the appearance of wisdom. I hold firmly to my original views. After all, I am a philosopher. The more you know, the less sure you are. The mirror is a worthless invention. The only way to truly see yourself is in the reflection of someone else's eyes. History contains little beyond a list of people who have accommodated themselves with other people's property. I believe that there never was a creator of a philosophical system who did not confess at the end of his life that he had wasted his time. It must be admitted that the inventors of the mechanical arts have been much more useful to men than the inventors of syllogisms. He who imagined a ship towers considerably above him who imagined innate ideas. The interest I have to believe a thing is no proof that such a thing exists. Many are destined to reason wrongly, others, not to reason at all, and others, to persecute those who do reason. Every abuse ought to be reformed, unless the reform is more dangerous than the abuse itself.